Hello there. I don't know if you are like me, but on a Sunday afternoon I like to relax, listen to my favourite music, have a glass of port, and of course, have a piece of cheese with it. My choice is always Baggy hi-fi cheese, the richest cheddar you can buy. It's the sound choice. Tasty. Greetings cats and kittens, welcome once again to Baggy Hi-Fi, this YouTube channel devoted to record collecting and the vinyl community here in the UK. I hope you are all well. Things seem to be warming up here, it's very sunny outside. I'm going to go for a walk later on because spring seems to be on its way, which is great news. This latest video is going to be another contest entry, and it's going to be another contest entry for that's been set by Pete at Sounds from the West Coast channel. This is the second video I've made in connection with Pete and his excellent channel Sounds from the West Coast. He's not paying me to do this. I did really want to make this video. So this is one he set, and I'll just read out what the idea is behind this contest. And he's doing this contest because he has reached and has now exceeded 200 subscribers to his channel. So well done, Pete, and I know you will receive many more. So the theme for this contest is called Laying the Foundations. Laying the foundations of your record collection. And the instructions are: show 9 albums that are the foundation stones of your collection. Not necessarily your 9 favourite albums, but milestone albums that got you started maybe with a certain genre or style of music. Records which laid the foundations of what you've listened to or have collected ever since. And there's a final part to the contest is name a person, a book, a magazine or a venue important in developing your taste in music. So I'll leave that for the end of this video. Now, this laying the foundations theme of course made me think of the past and when I first started listening to music. I did grow up in a house with 2 older sisters, and my dad was into music as well. Both sisters collected records, and so I feel that they kind of gave me a head start with certain albums and certain artists, and some of which I'll show in this video. The first group I ever really loved were the Monkees, and I still love them to this day. Just yesterday on the radio I was listening to heard them play A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You by the Monkees, and just that sound, it's just so underrated. The records were just so well made, great material. They had some great songwriters working for them. They had some good songwriters within their own ranks as well. But this is the first Monkees album, and I sort of rediscovered the Monkees in the 80s, and as I say, still love them to this day. Fantastic 60s group. Forget all that stuff about them being manufactured. It doesn't matter. They were a great group. Now, growing up in the 70s, then when I first started being able to buy records myself with my pocket money, I guess I was quite a kind of an arty teenager, and I would eventually go to art school. So I did like, along with many others, like Bowie and Roxy Music, of course. Still think they're really important artists of the 70s. But in particular, Eno's solo albums, really love them. The first few are just fantastic still. And this is the one I really like the most. And it's Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. That's his second solo album after leaving Roxy Music. Now, certainly, this idea of laying the foundations, buying Eno's records and Bowie's as well to an extent, opened up other artists to me, especially when I would read about them in the music papers, artists that Bowie and Eno admired, for example, like krautrock and music that I'd never heard before. So it did lead me on to discovering other types of music. But this album is just full of while it's full of experimentation with sound, and Dino was using his obscure, was it obscure strategies? I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a sort of a random technique of how he produced his records. While it is full of sort of experimental sounds, it's completely tuneful. This is full of songs, memorable songs, really strange lyrics as well, but this stands up so well, and as do most of his records that he sang on. But I say this one, Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy from 1974, is my favourite. I'll just show you the label because it's a unusual island label. It's a bit mildewed actually, because this is my original copy. So there you go, Brian Eno. I think in the 70s, I mean, we're so obsessed now with genres and micro genres and categories of music. Then we weren't really too conscious of it. You know, we didn't say, you know, I'm a progressive fan or I'm a heavy metal fan, because didn't even really hear the phrase heavy metal or even metal in those days. It was sort of heavy rock. If you liked Black Sabbath, you liked heavy music. If you like King Crimson, yeah, you maybe class yourself as a progressive fan, but you know, you could like both really. You know, if you liked Prog, you probably liked Bowie as well at the same time. So those things weren't really as important in those categories. They weren't so important in the 70s. So I've just mentioned King Crimson, and I mentioned Prog as well. You know, I liked Prog as well as liking you know, Roxy and Bowie, and in particular I liked King Crimson. This is my original copy of Starless and Bible Black, which is a definite favourite, probably, you know, from many people's favourite period of King Crimson. The lineup with David Cross, Robert Fripp, John Wetton and Bill Bruford, and they made some great records with that lineup. Again, this cover's a little bit mildewed as well, because this is my original copy from the 70s. I think this, you know, in King Crimson, I know Robert Fripp doesn't regard his band King Crimson as a prog band anyway. Pink Rim Island. They had many other influences which you wouldn't really get in, say, Genesis. Some jazz players were on their albums. There's a lot of improv, especially in this period, and I really loved side 2 with the 2 tracks, improvised live tracks, I think, Starless and Bible Black and Fracture. Still think this is a fantastic album which stands up very well. Now, I mentioned about growing up in a house with 2 sisters who were into music, and one of my older sisters was quite into folk music and folk rock, and I remember her bringing this record into the house, and I remember sitting in the room listening to it with her, and she also liked Steel Eye Span, and so my love of English folk rock remains to this day. I still buy this stuff. I love Steel Eye Span. I like a lot of stuff that followed on from this. I mean, there are many practitioners today, you know, harking back to this golden age of English folk rock. So yeah, this is a particular one I do like. Sandy Denny had left by this stage, but I always loved this cover as well, this textured sleeve and this lovely atmospheric photo of the band. Richard Thompson on brilliant form on this one. Now, I do like 60s music, but I kind of wasn't really aware of it as a child. It's something I discovered later on. Bands who I love now, like The Who and The Kinks, but some American 60s bands I probably discovered sort of late 80s really, and one of them was The Byrds. I remember having a best of the A's and the B's, the volume 1, in the 80s, and just playing that to death and just loving that jangly guitar. And of course in the 80s there's a lot of bands who were influenced by The Byrds. This is Younger Than Yesterday, one of their more psych orientated albums. Includes So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, My Back Pages, very nice, The Byrds. And again in the 80s there was an important time for me in discovering music I'd not heard before, so milestone albums that laid the foundations of my collection ever since. Very much a revelation to me was, garage punk music, garage psych, of the American variety, which was collected on the Pebbles compilations. Started buying these in the 80s and loving discovering the bands that weren't really that well known, but made some great savage garage sounds and some wacky psych sounds. So yeah, the Pebbles compilations, of course, the original Nuggets compilation that Lenny Kaye put together, very, very influential on lots and lots of people. Turned them on to this particular kind of music, which I love still. And maybe more so was the discovery of UK psych and garage and beat and mod freak beat bands of the late 60s. Compilations like this one. This is the British Psychedelic Trip. This is volume 4, 1965-1970, including quite obscure bands, but nevertheless brilliant, punchy, short, psychedelic singles. Usually they're the Poets, great Scottish psych beat band. So yeah, and these compilations were really important to me, and built on them ever since. I often have mentioned the Bam Caruso label. That's why I didn't really show one of the Rubble series, but they were great. I have all of those. So in the 80s, and this is something that Peter's mentioned on Sounds from the West Coast label, I think a lot of people in the 80s were rediscovering the 60s, and that is certainly an influence on the movement, which was called the Paisley Underground. New bands were coming up, very influenced by 60s psychedelia, 60s pop, like the Bangles and the Rain Parade, one of my favourite bands from the Paisley Underground. This is their first EP, Explosions in the Glass Palace. I played this the other day, was knocked out by it again. This probably turned me on to quite a lot of other guitar bands in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, important for me. Foundational records, the Rain Parade. Now, I haven't mentioned much new stuff in this video. It's not that I don't listen to new music. I haven't mentioned any classical music as well, because I'm really quite into 20th century classical music. I could have shown those as well, but there's not much room when you have to pick 9 records, 9 albums. So one label that I've really have been enjoying recently, and there's lots of really interesting electronic music coming out of the UK and other places, the Ghostbox label, mainly devoted to electronic music. This is one by the Belbury Poly, the Owl's Map, which is one of my favourites. Also a label to note, which I'm really sort of getting into, is Castles in Space, which is Dale from Gatefold 33 was talking about in his latest video. Yeah, certainly worth checking out. So they are 9 records which I regard as sort of keystone, milestone records in my collection that turn me on to other areas of music, other practitioners, maybe those styles of music. Now, the final question that Pete set was name a person, a book, a magazine, or a venue which was important in developing your taste in music. Well, it's hard for younger people to imagine, but music papers were very, very important, because the only radio programs that really played any interest in music were really John Peel in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and so there was no internet, of course, so music papers had a real important impact on what we would buy. And so the NME, I used to buy it every week. This is a copy from the 90s, from March 1993, with Bowie on the front and Suede. This isn't really the era that was terribly important for me. Probably the writers I remember being really influential on what I would buy were like Ian Penman, Ian MacDonald, Charles Shaw Murray, writers like that. So yes, the New Musical Express, the NME, I don't think it exists now, maybe as a website, but yeah, it's had its day, but nevertheless was very important in the taste making of many music fans over the last few decades. So there you are, that's my race through 9 records which laid the foundations of my record collection. Hope you enjoyed that, hope it was some interest. Please do check out Pete's channel, Sounds from the West Coast. He often shows stuff which other people aren't showing. Certainly into a lot of electronic music and quite an eclectic taste anyway. So there he is, Pete on the west coast of England, Cumbria. He doesn't live in San Francisco. And here's me on the northeast of England, Baggy Hi-Fi. So signing out now, hope to see you soon in the next video. I'm going to be doing part 2 of my British jazz overview, which is probably going to be ongoing now. It's not just going to be a 2-parter. It's going to be every now and again I'm going to show my latest purchases in British jazz. So bye for now.